Hey, what's up, guys? Jake Steele, ironandsteel.com. This is podcast episode number 25. And as always, thank you very much for being here. It is greatly appreciated. And on that note, thank you again to everybody that tunes into this podcast every week. Thank you to everybody that reaches out to me weekly to say how much they enjoy it. And thank you especially to those of you who take the time to share the podcast with others on your social media. Anyone that goes out of their way to share the link, whether it be Spotify, YouTube, or the website ironandsteel.com. Thank you, genuinely. It does take a fair amount of work to produce these articles and subsequently this podcast, and really everything else related to Iron and Steel too. So your feedback is super helpful, very encouraging, and it does keep me motivated to continue producing this stuff for you guys. So thank you again, and please continue to share this stuff. Share the links, whether it's the podcast or ironandsteel.com or the YouTube link or what have you. So but again, thank you. On the subject of the website, so if you go to ironandsteel.com to see any of these articles or merch firsthand, whatever it is, you will notice now that there's a pop-up that prompts you to enter in your email address and join my mailing list. So in exchange for doing so, you will receive a discount code for 15% off of your first order. So please head over there, enter in your email. It just takes 2 seconds. The purpose of the email subscribers list is just to keep you up to date and informed when there's new content, whether it's a fresh podcast episode or a new article on ironandsteel.com or new merch or whatever. So I'm not selling your info to the Russians or anything like that. So it's literally just an email, maybe 2 a week at the absolute most. And it's just to let you know when there's fresh content. So hop over there and punch in your email. I would appreciate it. So speaking of merch, I'm ready to blow some shit out this Black Friday. So what I've decided is all weekend long, so that's Black Friday through the end of Cyber Monday, go to ironandsteel.com, grab whatever you need, and get 40% off site-wide. So yes, 40% off literally anything and everything on the website. No minimums, no bullshit, no spend $100 and get this or that, no requirements, no shit, just 40% off for 4 full days. So that's just while that stuff lasts. Once it's gone, I'm going to restock within a few days, hopefully, with some new and very bitchin' merch. So again, don't forget while you're there on the site stealing this shit from me at cost to enter your email address when it prompts you to do so. No, you can't combine the 15 and the 40% off, but the code for 15% off when you enter your email address doesn't expire. So once you rip this shit from me, you get it, you decide you love it, and maybe you decide you want to get some more, you can enter in that code for 15% off. So okay, enough of that, enough business. Let's get to this week's story. And then when we're all through with that, I'll answer some questions that came through this week. So also, one other thing, as a side note, I'm toying with the idea of potentially including listeners' stories in with some of these podcast episodes, and maybe even potentially on the website itself. So if you have a story that you want to tell, whether it's about your car, your influences, your hot rod heroes, whatever the case may be, if you have a story and you would like it to be told, email me at jake@ironandsteel.com, and I'll start going through them one by one. And I think what I'll do is I'll just pick 1 or 2 to include every week in each podcast. And I want to make it something that's fun, interactive, and kind of, inclusive and exciting for you guys. So let's get your stories written down and let's get them told. So also, if you include photos, I'll probably most likely include the story and pictures on my website too. So yeah, again, if you have a story you want to tell about your hot rod, your influences, or how you ended up in this hobby, let it rip. So again, just email me that stuff, jake@ironandsteel.com. So, okay, on that note, I'm going to read you a story today that is just exactly what I just mentioned. It was a story written by Clayton Paddison, who some of you may know as Mr. Model T. And if you're not familiar with Clayton or his car, which is a bitchin' early style hot rod Model T Roadster, I recommend that you go to my website, Iron and Steel, and check it out for yourself. The article is called, in his own words, Mr. Model T. So hop over there and check it out for yourself. There's some great photos on there included in that article as well. So otherwise, yeah, for now, just kick back and relax, and I'll read it to you. Okay guys, here's what Clayton has to say about his Model T. So I'm just reading this off my website. I'm going to just do it in one shot. It's always more difficult for me to read something that somebody else has written. Not quite sure why, but so anyway, I'm just going to blast through this, and I'll do the best I can. But if I fuck something up or stumble over a word, I will direct you to my complaints department, I guess. Anyway, here's what Clayton has to say about his Model T. He says, "There's always one car in your life that changes you. It reflects you, defines you for all time. She pushes you, enrages you, makes you think, drives you crazy, and yet is dead nuts reliable and is a somewhat enchanted, unconditionally loyal companion on the road. She invokes emotions like love, frustration, confusion, anger, compassion, melancholy, and sentimentality. All of this from a hunk of iron and steel." I swear I didn't write that part. What a coinky-dink. We all have one of those cars. For me, it's my 1927 Model T Roadster. I bought my Roadster on July 6th, 2006, as a rusted-out Hulk for a whopping $800. When I drug it home, my dad playfully joked that I had lost my mind. I, however, had a vision. I had always been fond of and influenced by the very early hot rods from the pre-World War II era, which is an era that has become more or less forgotten. As a kid, I had come across pictures of the legendary Roy Multi-Aldrich's 23 T Roadster and Robert Hodges T Touring, and I was hooked. I knew my T had to be a tribute to cars like this. Now at the time, I was a complete novice at building cars. Having pored over books on them since I could barely read, I knew just about everything about them, yet I had never touched a welder, swung a wrench, or designed a car from the ground up. Undaunted, I dug in with unbottled enthusiasm, learning as I went. The farther I went, the more I knew she was really something special. The original Roadster doors on my car had been missing for 50 years, long before my friend's grandfather had purchased the body and chassis from a local kid in 1966. Fast forward to 2006 when my neighbor comes over and says, "You know, I have 2 full sets of those doors if you want them." "Yes, of course," I replied, eager to finally find a set. He said, "I used to buy them up whenever I found them when I was restoring my old T dragster in the early 80s. But the T is done, so I don't have much need for them. $50, and they're yours." After I paid for them and picked them up, I immediately picked out the best right-hand door, the best left-hand door, and set off to hang them. That was when I noticed that they had half a racing number painted across them in spray paint. The funny part was, the body had the other half of the same numbers, which lined up perfectly to say 3, 5, 7. I thought to myself, no way. Then I checked the other side. Sure enough, it had the same 3, 5, 7 number. Not only had I bought back the missing doors from my car, but the 2 that I picked from the 4 that I had been offered were the 2 that originally came from my car. The odds, I thought, were trillions to 1. By the summer of 2008, the T was triumphantly on the road, but I was still learning and getting to know her and what she needed. With a little more experience under my belt, I started pondering how I could improve a few things. The front suspension I had built based around a set of knockoff Laurel underslung brackets that I had picked up at a local swap meet. The problem was, the spring shackles tended to bottom out and pin up against the bracket. The suspension was awfully hard and was making my butt miserable on the potholed streets of Portland. The rear was an experiment in new methods of lowering, which did work, but didn't yield quite enough clearance. The 75-year-old Babbitt bearings were also running on borrowed time. It had already chucked 2 rods on me, and 1 of the 3 main caps. None of these things deterred me from enjoying it, or detracted from the fun it got from driving it, mind you. I think that should have said the fun I got from driving it, mind you. But anyway. In 2010, Chris, a very good friend of mine, whom I consider a bit of a big brother, and I decided to drive our 2 Model Ts to Bonneville for the National Land Speed Trials Speed Week. It was an event both of us had wanted to attend since childhood. We had just finished building his T Speedster, so it was a perfect time to go through my 85-year-old engine after pounding on it for 5 years. We knew we would really have to do it right if I was going to ask her to make that kind of a trip. So in September 2011, I jumped in and started tearing the car down to get the motor out. Since the T firewalls are low and the transmission is part of the motor, it was necessary to pull the body off to remove the engine. Once the body was off and the engine was out, I started looking over my chassis, contemplating minor improvements. This was to be a quick refresh, after all. Well, the quick refresh soon turned into me following a breadcrumb trail that led to more of a, quote, scrap the entire suspension system and design a whole new chassis type of project. Late nights and weekends, cutting, welding, riveting, machining, painting, assembling, and coming home to a grumpy but supportive wife was my life for the next few months. The design of the new suspension came to me in a dream at 2:30 a.m. after struggling with designs for more than a week. I sat up in bed and excitedly scribbled it down on the back of a utility bill I had sitting on my nightstand. The next day, I had a decent plan drawn out and started hunting for parts and fabricating it up. I started with an undropped T-axle and a pair of split Model A wishbones that I made custom ends from Model A tie rod ends. The bones were cut and angled for the right caster before my custom incorporated spring perches were added. I didn't shorten them, so as to push the front axle forward 2 3/4 of an inch. The frame mounting plates for split wishbones are historically flimsy on most T racers, and I like to overbuild. I made mine instead from 1/8-inch plate and hot riveted them to the frame with the help of an old locomotive mechanic and his air rivet gun. My shoulder hurt so fucking bad for days after that. The rear suspension was redesigned using an old set of elaborate lowering brackets from a period accessory ad. They were a tad sketchy, so they got a beefy redesign as well. The brackets pushed the axle back about 4 inches and hung the spring below and in front of the rear axle. No more clearance issues. As for the engine, the incorrect 1922 block that I had started with was tired. It had been bored, had slight pitting, and the bearings were also shot. I was able to hunt down a really nice June of 1926 block and a late 27 through 41 EE series crankshaft, which are made from the best steel alloy ever devised, the strongest of the T cranks. This new block and crank became the foundation for a powerful new flathead T engine that would run a full race cam, 302 Ford V8 valves, hardened seats, aluminum pistons, a Burns 2x2 intake, a pair of 81s, the works. The Chicago E-Mark Overdrive also got a major overhaul, including new bearings and several handmade bearing retainers to replace the damaged ones. After 9 months of hard work, quite a few beers, we fired the new T successfully without a single initial adjust or fight of any kind. I was a bit nervous about the twin Stromberg 81s being too much for the naturally asthmatic T engine, as many of my fellow T'ers voiced similar concerns. On the first test drive, however, it was apparent that the pair was perfect, and it really went like hell. After the first fire of the new motor, we had just 2 weeks left to get the car finished before we were due to leave on the 1,700-mile road trip to Bonneville. I completed the last phase of the build just 8 hours before we were supposed to leave. I couldn't be prouder to say that she made the 1,732-mile round trip flawlessly, with only a fan bushing and a battery switch as casualties. Shortly after Bonneville, I set out to sort out the issues we found that needed improvement, one of which was the top end, so I upgraded the rear axle to an original Hall-Scott Ruxtol 2-speed with a 3-to-1 gearing. Since that time, the Roadster has had numerous adventures. It made an epic road trip to the East Coast to participate in the 3rd annual Race of Gentlemen in Wildwood, New Jersey. That was in 2014, and on July 6th, 2016, exactly 10 years to the day that I had purchased the rotted out Little T, we made a once-in-a-lifetime visit to Jay Leno's garage and were featured on an episode of his YouTube series. This would end up being the first of 2 appearances on Jay's show. In conclusion, Clayton writes, "She's been an amazing partner on the road for all these years, and I truly look forward to more adventures to come." Okay, there you have it. In his own words, Mr. Model T. Again, ironandsteel.com is the website. You can go there and check that story out for yourself if you so choose. That car's been done for quite a while. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but yeah, it's received rightfully quite a bit of attention, but it's worth checking out on the site. There's some great photos that my friend Ben took that are included. So yeah, hop over there and check it out for yourself. It's pretty far back, several dozen stories ago, so probably on the second page, pretty far back, but it is there. So yeah, hop on over there and check it out for yourself. All right, so I had quite a few questions come through this week. I'll blast through a few and we'll see how far we get. But the first question was, Is there a car that you've always wanted but have never been able to get a hold of? Yes. In fact, it actually just slipped through my hands last weekend, I guess. So the car, some of you may be familiar with the car. It was the Wayne Mahaffey 1935 Ford Phaeton. If you're not familiar with it, you can Google it. I'll probably write a story about it sometime in the near future, but excuse me, 35 Ford Phaeton, chopped, padded top, skirts, white walls, caps, all the early custom stuff. This car, I mean, this is it. Wayne Mahaffey built it originally. I think it was completed around 1950. Wayne he's still alive. He's down in Salem, Oregon, but he originally built the car. I think it was done in 50. I'd have to look and see. I don't remember how long he owned it for, but he did sell it, and then much later down the road, he bought it back and then put the car back, restored the car back to the way he had originally built it. So totally bitchin' car, Cadillac flathead. It's the quintessential early custom. So anyway, this car's existed for a long time. I've known about it for a long time. Always wanted it. I wrote a story, I don't know, a year or two ago called Inventing History. And in the Inventing History story, I mentioned Wayne Mahaffey because he at one point owned my 36 5-window. So I briefly mentioned him. His daughter, Jill, actually got a hold of me she somehow found the article, got a hold of me, and we kind of developed a little rapport. And the deal was, I was, the kind of conversation in the background from her end was kind of like, well, Dad's getting up there, and at some point we are going to have to figure out, we being her family, what to do with all of his cars, including the Phaeton. So I guess long story short, I had been sort of campaigning for a shot at trying to get the car when it became available. So that was kind of the theme of our conversations, and I always in the back of my head was kind of anticipating that a day would come when I would get a phone call saying, hey, the inevitable happened, and the car's available, and why don't you come down and we'll talk about it. And so I always kind of in the back of my mind thought there was at least a chance, a fairly good chance, that I would end up with a car. So I was down in California about a month ago. Jill called me, I missed it, and I got a text from her, and she was pretty upset. And the theme of the text was basically that, without saying anything, her dad, Wayne, had sent the Phaeton along with several other cars to Mecum in Las Vegas to be auctioned off at no reserve. So she was pretty upset about it. I think the whole family felt a little blindsided by that. And I think Wayne was kind of expecting that car was just going to break the fucking bank. And I kind of knew a little bit better just from going off of some of the things that I've seen with traditional hot rod and customs going to auction with no reserve. I kind of had a better idea of what to expect, but she gave me all the info, how to bid, when it's going to be coming, when it's going to be live, and all that stuff. So I wasn't as prepared as I could have been or would have been if I would have known that this was coming much earlier. So long story short, I signed up to bid, and the car went for a fairly good deal, but it was a little bit more than I could muster at that exact moment with just a couple of weeks notice. So so the Wayne Mahaffey 35 Ford Phaeton would be the car that I have wanted but have not been able to get. So at least not yet. I don't know what the new owner is going to do with it or whatever, but I don't anticipate it's going to be coming back onto the market anytime soon, but I guess you never know. So anyway, kind of a sore subject, so fuck you for bringing that up. Just kidding. The next question was, what is your favorite type of music while working on cars? So I really don't, usually if I'm working on cars, I'm listening to podcasts or documentaries about just retarded shit. If I'm listening to music, you know how everybody's always like, oh, I listen to everything and my tastes are so eclectic. I can get into. I'm not like that. I listen to punk rock and like early country. That's about it. Everything else can fuck off. So, next question was, if you had to get rid of all of your cars but one, which one would you choose to keep? Oof. Damn. I don't know. Hopefully that day never comes. I guess if I were choosing just one car that I had to get rid of everything but one, I think it would be, I would keep my blue 36 3-window that East Bay Speed and Custom just chopped. So yeah, that would be tough. That would be a really shitty scenario. Hopefully that never happens. The next question was, when it comes to hot rod tires, white walls or black walls? I don't know. It depends on what kind of car you're building. Back in the day, my opinion is that most of these cars got white walls. You see these cars now that are just absolutely hammered, killer stance and black walls, and they're just fucking mean, sinister looking cars. They look bitchin', but in my opinion, that's kind of a newer-ish trend. If you look at most of these hot rods built, in the 50s and 60s, number one, the stance wasn't always spot on, and number two, they were almost always running white walls. So, but if you look back in a lot of the little books, you'll notice, 32 5-window, let's say, lowered in the front, lowered in the back, but not quite enough to like tuck the tires, at least in the rear. You'll notice a lot of gaps, 2-inch gaps or so in the rear. So, but most of them got white walls. But my problem is I like a little bit of everything, so I'll have one of each. So. The next question was, why do some 36 Fords have the thick chrome trim across the grille? Was that a specific model or was it aftermarket? That was a question that was a response to a question, I should say, that I posted on Instagram, and in the background was a picture of my Phaeton, which has that trim. To answer your question, that was an aftermarket trim kit made by Pines, which most of you are probably already familiar with, but you might not know that that particular trim was actually available in 1936. So it was like one of the, if not the earliest aftermarket custom things for 36 Fords. And what Pines was doing was marketing that trim mostly to dealerships. And the theory was basically they were selling it as a way to update the look of your 36 Ford and set it apart from the rest of the dealers that were selling the same thing. And especially when 36 Fords started to become used cars and they were, traded back into dealers or on like a used car lot, Pines would try to sell that trim kit to dealers and basically to dress up a 36 Ford, so you could sell it more easily, basically. So, to answer your question, aftermarket. The next question was, this was another response to the same deal. So my Phaeton was in the background, but it says, when is this thing going to be for sale? Referring to the Phaeton. Hopefully never. So I am pretty fond of that car, and I don't anticipate selling it ever if I can help it. So the next question was, do you know anything about Shelley Feinberg's The Pink Chariot? I didn't know anything about it. I was actually hesitant to Google it because I didn't know if it was going to be like some inside joke or something. The Pink Chariot. No, I Googled it. The only thing that I found was actually this guy that asked the question. The only thing that I found was your post on the ham asking for information. So from the photos that I saw, it looks like a pretty bitchin' car. So if anybody knows anything about Shelley Feinberg's The Pink Chariot, feel free to get a hold of me, Jake at ironandsteel.com. and I will pass that information along to this person. So the next question was, are old car junkyards dying off? Bro, you need to listen to my podcast more often. You asked me this question the last time and I answered it. So as far as I'm concerned, they're dead. There's like one old car junkyard around here. I've never bought anything from them. I don't know what that market's like, but there's not a thriving old car junkyard market as far as I can tell. So are old car junkyards dying off? I would say yes. The last question was, if you had a Ford 260 laying around, what would you do with it / put it in? Well, what I would do with it is probably throw it away, and what I would put it in is the fucking garbage. I'm the wrong person to ask about that. I have no interest in a Ford 260, so I would say throw it away and buy a small block Chevy. So let the hate mail fly on that. So yeah, anyway, I think that's all the time we have for those questions for this week. Again, don't wait for me to ask. If you have questions or comments, feel free to let them pour in. Jake at ironandsteel.com, or get a hold of me on Instagram, and I'll just pick a few at random every week, and we'll see where it leads. So okay, thank you guys again for all the great questions, and thank you to everyone for tuning into this every week. It really is appreciated. And again, if you enjoy this content, please share the link, whether it's Spotify, YouTube, or my website, ironandsteel.com. And again, while you're there, punch in your email address on the website and join my mailing list. So again, you'll get 15% off your first order if you do that. But anyway, it's just to keep you updated on what's going on with Iron and Steel. So on that subject, I should have the third and final serial killer themed design available, both as a t-shirt and a sticker sometime within the next week or so. So keep an eye out for that. Also, the second part of my 2-part story about East Bay Speed and Custom is going to be available on the website in the next few days. So that's just another great reason to hit the subscribe button, and you can be notified when that happens. So the first half of that story is there now for you to check out as we speak. So again, 2-part story about East Bay. First one's up, second one's coming. If you're a lazy fucker, don't know how to read, they'll both be podcasts soon enough, so stick around for that. Also, don't forget to email me, Jake at ironandsteel.com, if you want your own story told. I'm going to start including these listener stories just as soon as I can get them sorted. And if you include photos, you'll most likely also see your story and photos on the website. So yeah. Also, anyone that either has Iron and Steel merch or is getting their hands on Iron and Steel merch this weekend for Black Friday, feel free to post it on your social media and tag me, and I'm going to start reposting that stuff as well. So I'm rambling. Anyway, again, thank you to everyone that tunes in every week. Tell your friends and family. Maybe take a break from arguing with your fucking weird uncle about politics at the dinner table this Thanksgiving, and instead casually mention ironandsteel.com or this podcast. Okay, thank you all again one more time, and I will talk to you guys again in exactly 7 days.